summer of 1456, Europe held its breath. An unstoppable empire was marching west, its banners darkening the horizon, its cannons shaking the ground itself. Against it stood a city already scarred by war, defended by barely 6,000 exhausted believers. No reinforcements, no mercy expected. What happened next at Belgrade was not just a battle, it was the moment Europe refused to die. By the mid-15th century, the Ottoman Empire was no longer just a rising power. It was a force of destiny. Constantinople had fallen 3 years earlier, sending shockwaves across Christendom and confirming what many already feared. The Ottomans were no longer containable. Sultan Mehmed II, young, brilliant, and ruthless, had achieved what generations of rulers before him could not. Now, with the ancient Byzantine capital in his hands, his eyes turned toward the heart of Europe. Hungary stood in the way, and Belgrade was its iron gate. Strategically positioned at the confluence of the Danube and Sava rivers, Belgrade was more than a fortress. It was the lock holding the Ottoman tide at bay. Mehmed knew this. So did Europe. The fortress had been reinforced, rebuilt, and bloodied over decades of conflict, but now it faced its greatest test. Mehmed marched with an army estimated at 80,000 men, elite janissaries, seasoned infantry, cavalry, engineers, and one of the largest artillery trains ever assembled in Europe. Massive cannons that had shattered Constantinople's walls now rolled toward Belgrade, carried with the confidence of an empire that had never been defeated in open conquest. Inside the city, the defenders were few, underfunded, and deeply divided. The Hungarian crown was weak, Europe's rulers were busy fighting each other, and reinforcements were uncertain at best. The defense fell largely into the hands of John Hunyadi, a veteran commander hardened by years of border warfare against the Ottomans. He was no king, no saint, just a soldier who understood the enemy better than anyone alive. Alongside him stood an unlikely figure, Giovanni da Capistrano, a fiery Franciscan friar who rallied peasants, farmers, and townsfolk with sermons that turned fear into defiance. These were not professional soldiers. Many carried farming tools instead of swords, faith instead of armor. Yet as the Ottoman artillery opened fire, pounding the walls day after day, something extraordinary began to form inside Belgrade. Cannonballs smashed towers, collapsed ramparts, and turned stone into dust. The city burned, food ran low, disease spread. Every rule of warfare said Belgrade should fall. Mehmed expected surrender. Instead, he received resistance. The defenders repaired walls under fire, launched daring river attacks against Ottoman supply ships, and refused every offer of mercy. Faith, desperation, and sheer human stubbornness fused into a single will to survive. When the Ottomans finally breached the outer defenses and launched a massive assault, the defenders did not break. They fought hand-to-hand in smoke-filled streets, pushing attackers back with boiling oil, stones, and anything they could lift. Even as janissaries planted their banners inside the city, they were cut down. The siege became a grinding nightmare, not just of steel and blood, but of belief versus inevitability. For the first time since Constantinople, the Ottoman war machine stalled, and in that hesitation, history began to shift. As the siege dragged on, the psychological battle grew as brutal as the physical one. Sultan Mehmed II had never known defeat, and that certainty shaped everything he did. He believed numbers alone would crush resistance. Yet Belgrade refused to collapse. Each failed assault chipped away at Ottoman confidence, while each successful defense hardened the resolve of the Christians inside the walls. The defenders knew they were not fighting for Hungary alone. They were fighting for time. Every day Belgrade held meant Europe lived another day free. Capistrano's sermons echoed through the battered streets, transforming fear into purpose. Men who had never held a weapon stood shoulder to shoulder with seasoned fighters, convinced that retreat meant annihilation not just of their city, but of their world. Meanwhile, Hunyadi orchestrated defense with ruthless efficiency. He understood Ottoman tactics, anticipated breaches, and exploited moments of chaos. When Ottoman troops flooded through broken sections of wall, Hunyadi ordered controlled withdrawals, then counterattacks that trapped attackers inside narrow streets where numbers meant nothing. Smoke, screams, and confusion turned superiority into liability. The Ottomans responded with overwhelming force. Mehmed ordered a final, all-out assault, committing elite janissaries in waves meant to drown the defenders in blood. For hours, the fighting reached a scale rarely seen in medieval warfare. Corpses piled so high, they formed makeshift ramps. Fire consumed entire districts. The Danube ran red. Yet still, Belgrade did not fall. Then, in a moment no one had planned, the battle changed entirely. A group of Christian defenders launched an unauthorized sortie from the city, attacking Ottoman positions outside the walls. What began as chaos turned into opportunity. Hunyadi seized the moment, ordering a full counterattack. Christian forces surged out of Belgrade, striking artillery positions, supply camps, and command centers. The Ottomans, exhausted from weeks of siege and unprepared for an external assault, faltered. Panic spread. Cannon crews were overrun, tents burned. Even Mehmed himself was wounded during the fighting. For the first time, the Ottoman army faced something it was not designed to handle. A desperate enemy attacking with nothing left to lose. Discipline cracked. Retreat orders collided with ongoing assaults. What should have been a final Ottoman victory turned into a chaotic withdrawal. By nightfall, the once unstoppable army was pulling back. The siege was over. Belgrade had survived. The psychological impact was enormous. Across Europe, church bells rang in celebration. The Pope ordered daily noon bells to commemorate the victory, a tradition that continues in many places today. The myth of Ottoman invincibility had been shattered. They could be stopped. They could be beaten. And that realization changed the balance of power in ways no one could fully grasp at the time. The Siege of Belgrade did not end the Ottoman threat, but it reshaped history in a quieter, deeper way. Mehmed II would go on to conquer more territory, but never again with the same aura of inevitability. Europe, given precious breathing room, slowly reorganized. Borders hardened, fortresses strengthened, armies adapted. The victory at Belgrade bought time, decades of it, and time was the one resource Europe desperately needed. For the defenders, the cost was staggering. Thousands lay dead. The city was devastated. Disease claimed more lives after the siege than battle itself, including John Hunyadi, who died of plague shortly after his greatest victory. There were no parades, no monuments raised immediately. This was not a clean triumph. It was survival at the edge of extinction. Yet its legacy endured. Belgrade became a symbol not of dominance, but of resistance. It proved that empires, no matter how powerful, could be challenged by belief, preparation, and unity forged under pressure. The story of 6,000 Christians standing against 80,000 Ottomans is not just about numbers. It is about moments when history narrows to a single point, where collapse seems certain, yet refusal changes everything. Had Belgrade fallen in 1456, the road into Central Europe would have been open. Vienna, Rome, and beyond would have faced the Ottoman war machine without time to prepare. The cultural, political, and religious map of Europe might have been rewritten entirely. Instead, a battered fortress held long enough for the future to survive. That is why the Siege of Belgrade matters. Not because it was perfect, not because it was glorious, but because it was human, flawed, desperate, and defiant. 6,000 people stood where history demanded surrender, and by refusing, they saved a continent.